I froze as the wedding coordinator whispered, "They don't have a seat. They put you outside." The hallway smelled faintly of lilies and bleach. My mother adjusted her pearls, her fingers trembling slightly. My father looked anywhere but at me, at the ceiling, at his shoes, at the marble floor that probably cost more than my car. Inside the ballroom, I could hear the DJ counting down to the first dance, his voice muffled but cheerful. Chandeliers glittered through the glass doors like stars I wasn't allowed to touch. My sister Natasha floated past in her silk gown, train trailing behind her like a river of expensive fabric. She glanced at me once, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Don't make this about you, okay?" she whispered. I tightened my grip on the gift I'd wrapped the night before, smoothed my navy dress, and chose silence. No argument. No tears. Just the cold realization that I, Brielle, had finally been erased completely. The coordinator gestured toward a folding table beside the service doors, next to the trash cans. That's where they wanted me. The ballroom shimmered with wealth I could never touch. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, casting rainbow light across white tablecloths. Champagne flutes clinked in rhythm with laughter. Women in designer dresses posed for photos while men in expensive suits checked their watches. Outside, I sat by the trash cans, the hum of the DJ inside a cruel reminder that I didn't belong. The hallway was cold, drafty from the service entrance that kept swinging open. Staff rushed past carrying trays of appetizers, barely glancing at me. Through the glass, I watched Natasha spin in circles, her veil floating around her like she was the center of the universe. Maybe she was. She'd always been the sun, and I'd always been the shadow. Convenient when she needed someone to blame, invisible when she wanted credit. I traced the edge of my gift box, the silver wrapping paper smooth under my fingers. Inside was a crystal photo frame I'd chosen carefully, something meaningful. Now it felt like a joke. A peace offering to someone who'd declared war years ago. I remembered all the birthdays she overshadowed, the promotion she stole, and all the times I'd been the invisible sister. When I was 12, I won the school science fair. Mom forgot to come because Natasha had a dance recital the same day. When I graduated college with honors, the family dinner conversation centered on Natasha's new boyfriend. When I landed my first marketing job, she landed hers at the same firm 2 weeks later and somehow became the favorite within months. My anger simmered beneath a calm exterior, hot and patient like coals waiting for oxygen. 3 months ago, everything changed. I discovered emails on the shared company drive, buried in a folder marked Archive 2023. My project proposal, my research, my presentation deck, all rebranded under her name. She'd stolen my work and presented it to our CEO, taking credit for 6 months of my late nights and weekend research. The promotion I'd been promised went to her. The corner office, the raise, the recognition, all hers. Built on my foundation. I'd kept quiet, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Today felt cosmically perfect. My sister floated past again, flawless in silk, smiling at everyone while I seethed. She was charming, manipulative, entitled, a perfect storm of narcissism wrapped in beauty. Guests flocked to her like moths to flame, drawn by her practiced laugh and rehearsed humility. "I'm so blessed," she kept saying, touching her chest dramatically. I couldn't have done this without my amazing family. My mind replayed her words from years past, whispered during a family dinner when she thought I couldn't hear. "Guess you don't count," she told our cousin, explaining why I wasn't in the wedding party. "Brielle's just there, you know? She doesn't really add anything." Those words had burned themselves into my memory, carved deep like initials in tree bark. Now, watching her perform for the crowd, I felt that same burn spreading through my chest. She wore confidence like armor, convinced she was untouchable. She had no idea what I carried in my purse, screenshots, emails, timestamps. Evidence that would crack her perfect image like dropped porcelain. When a bridesmaid brought her bouquet to the stage, Natasha glanced at me and smirked. "Don't ruin the day," she mouthed, her eyes warning me to stay silent, stay invisible, Stay in my place by the trash cans. That was it. The line was drawn, the boundary crossed, the final insult delivered. Something inside me shifted, not broke, but hardened, crystallized into diamond-sharp clarity. I'd spent 28 years shrinking myself to make her comfortable, apologizing for existing, celebrating her victories while she stepped on mine. But today, in this hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and crushed dreams, I made a decision. I would not stay quiet. Not anymore. Not when I had proof of her lies folded neatly in my purse. Not when her boss, our boss, sat 3 tables away, toasting to her integrity and hard work. The irony was suffocating. I smiled back at her, slow and deliberate, and watched confusion flicker across her face. She expected tears. She got steel. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the ballroom entrance. The coordinator tried to stop me. I kept walking. Weeks ago at work, I discovered those emails proving she'd stolen my project and lied to our CEO. I remembered the moment clearly, sitting at my desk after midnight, finishing a presentation for a client pitch. I needed reference files from the shared drive and stumbled across a folder I didn't recognize. Inside were drafts of my market analysis report, but with her name in the header. My research, my data, my conclusions, all credited to Natasha Hayes. I'd felt sick, literally dizzy with betrayal. But I didn't confront her. Instead, I did what I did best. I gathered evidence. Screenshots of the original files with my authorship. Email chains showing I'd submitted the work first. Calendar invites proving I'd led the research meetings. I built a case so airtight it couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I had receipts, timestamps, witness accounts from coworkers who'd seen me working. The perfect arsenal. And I'd carried it for 3 months, waiting. Patience had never been my strength, but revenge made me disciplined. Today, surrounded by everyone who'd watched her succeed on my foundation, felt like destiny. I stayed calm, smiling politely at well-wishers as I entered the ballroom. Every toast made my jaw tighten. Every laugh felt like mockery. Every clinking glass reminded me of what she thought I couldn't do: stand up for myself, fight back, matter. A colleague from work spotted me and waved. "Brielle, I didn't know you'd be here." Her surprise stung. Of course she didn't know. I was the forgotten sister, the footnote, the name people struggled to remember. I waved back, my smile practiced and empty. Inside, my heart hammered against my ribs like a prisoner demanding release. The room felt hot despite the air conditioning. My dress clung to my back, damp with nervous sweat. But my hands stayed steady. My voice stayed level. I'd learned to hide turbulence beneath calm surfaces, to wear composure like camouflage. Natasha had taught me that, watching her manipulate rooms with false warmth and strategic tears. Now I'd use her lessons against her. I found an empty seat at a table near the back, uninvited but present. Visible. The DJ's voice boomed overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the beautiful bride." I noticed a folder left on a side table near the gift display. Someone had been organizing seating charts and forgotten their binder. Curiosity pulled me closer. Inside were notes from the wedding planner, seating arrangements, vendor contacts, and something unexpected. A printed email chain between Natasha and our company's executive team. My hands shook as I read. She'd done it again. Last month's client presentation, the one that had earned her a bonus and praise from the CEO, was built on my competitor analysis. My research. My late nights. The email showed her forwarding my work to herself, then deleting the original trail. She'd even joked about it to a colleague. "Brielle makes things so easy. She does the work, I take the credit. Perfect system." The words blurred as rage sharpened my vision. This wasn't just about one stolen project. This was systematic. Calculated. She'd built her entire career by standing on my back, crushing me into the ground while she climbed. That folder became the fuse I didn't know I was waiting to light. I slipped it into my purse, evidence multiplying like interest. Guests whispered around me, unknowingly including me in conversations. "She's so talented," someone said. Youngest senior manager in company history. Another voice chimed in, and so humble. She always credits her team. The sound of their laughter became unbearable, each burst a reminder of the lie they believed. My heartbeat synced with each step Natasha took across the ballroom floor, her heels clicking like a countdown. She moved through the crowd like royalty, touching shoulders, kissing cheeks, performing generosity. I watched her hug our CEO, watched him beam with pride. "Your sister is remarkable," he told me once at a company event, barely remembering my name. "You must be so proud." I'd smiled and agreed, because that's what invisible people do. We validate the stories told about us, even when they're fiction. But pride had rotted into something harder. I cataloged every lie she'd told, every credit she'd stolen, every time someone had praised her using my work as evidence. The weight of it pressed against my chest like a stone. Soon, I promised myself.
Soon they'll know.
Soon the truth would shatter her carefully constructed image. I cataloged her allies scattered throughout the room. Bridesmaids clustered near the bar, her best friend taking selfies, our parents seated at the head table like proud monarchs. Everyone adored her. Everyone believed the story she'd crafted. Hardworking, brilliant, destined for greatness. They didn't know about the plagiarism, the manipulation, the systematic theft.
Yet.
That word echoed in my mind like a promise.
Yet.
I watched our mother adjust Natasha's veil for the 100th time, her face glowing with pride. Dad stood nearby, chest puffed out, telling anyone who'd listen about his daughter's success. Senior manager at 29, he boasted. Always knew she'd be special. I'd been promoted to junior analyst the same year. No one mentioned it. I studied the room like a general surveying a battlefield, identifying exits and sight lines. The stage where toasts would happen. The projection screen used for the slideshow. The microphone stand waiting for speeches. My pulse steadied, fear transforming into focus. I'd spent my whole life invisible, erased, convenient. Today, I would become unforgettable. And they would all witness it. A coworker leaned over, interrupting my thoughts. "She's amazing, isn't she?" He gestured toward Natasha, with his champagne glass, his admiration obvious. My lips curved into a polite smile, but inside I was calculating angles, timing, impact. "Absolutely amazing," I agreed, my voice sweet as poison. He continued praising her work ethic, her innovative ideas, her natural leadership, all qualities built on my foundation. I nodded along, making appropriate sounds, while my mind raced ahead to the moment of revelation. Social pressure made the eventual payoff sweeter. Every compliment she received was another brick in the wall of her reputation, and I was about to demolish the entire structure. The more people adored her, the harder they'd fall when truth replaced illusion. I excused myself, weaving through tables toward the restroom. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes looked different, harder, clearer, done with waiting. I reapplied lipstick with steady hands, each stroke deliberate. When I returned to the ballroom, the DJ was announcing toasts. Perfect timing. The universe was aligning, or maybe I was just ready to force alignment. No one noticed me slipping back into the crowd. No one defended me when I'd been seated outside. That indifference became fuel, hot and sustaining. I'd been erased so many times, from family photos, from credit at work, from the narrative of our shared history. This time, erasure would be impossible. This time, I'd burn so bright they'd see me through closed eyelids. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed anger to keep peace. All the times I'd congratulated her on achievements built from my labor. All the family dinners where my accomplishments went unmentioned while hers were celebrated endlessly. The weight of that silence had crushed me into smaller and smaller versions of myself until I'd almost disappeared completely. But anger, when compressed long enough, becomes something powerful, diamond hard, unbreakable. I felt it now, thrumming through my veins like electricity. I wasn't the quiet sister anymore. I wasn't the convenient shadow. Today, I was the storm they'd pretended couldn't exist. And storms don't ask permission. They don't apologize. They simply arrive and change everything. The photographer called for family photos near the hallway where I'd been exiled.
Perfect.
I smiled, positioning myself at the edge of the frame, pretending nothing mattered. My hand rested on my purse, fingers brushing the evidence inside like a hidden weapon. "Brielle, move a little left," the photographer directed, barely looking at me. I moved. Obedient. Forgettable. Exactly what they expected. Natasha posed at the center, radiant and oblivious. Mom fussed with her dress. Dad checked his watch. I stood at the periphery, where I'd always been placed, and thought about the nuclear device in my purse. Not a weapon of mass destruction, just mass revelation. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1, smile. I smiled. We all smiled. The camera flashed, capturing the last moment before everything changed. The last image of the family as they understood it. Golden child and forgotten daughter, perfect sister and invisible one. After today, that narrative would implode. After today, they'd remember my name. The photographer reviewed the shots, nodding with satisfaction. "Beautiful family," he said. I almost laughed. I overheard Natasha boasting to her maid of honor near the champagne tower. "Honestly, Brielle couldn't handle the responsibility," she said, her voice carrying despite her attempt at discretion. "She's just not cut out for leadership. Too sensitive, you know?" The maid of honor nodded sympathetically. "It's hard having a sister who can't keep up." They laughed, the sound light and casual, like they were discussing whether instead of destroying someone's character. Smiling internally, I knew the moment of truth was near. Let her talk. Let her dig the hole deeper. Every word she spoke would make the reversal more devastating. I turned away before she could notice me listening, my face carefully neutral. A server offered me champagne. I accepted, though I had no intention of drinking it. I needed clarity, sharpness, perfect timing. The glass was just a prop, something to hold, so my hands didn't shake with anticipation. Around me, guests mingled and laughed, oblivious to the earthquake building beneath their feet. The DJ tested the microphone. Toast time was approaching. I checked my phone, screenshots backed up, evidence organized, timeline ready. I lingered near the stage, observing the microphone handoff between speakers. My pulse steadied, fear evaporating into calm certainty. The room was oblivious, wrapped in celebration and champagne bubbles. Every eye would soon witness reality collide with illusion, like watching a car crash in slow motion. The best man finished his speech to applause and laughter. Next came the maid of honor, who gushed about Natasha's kindness and authenticity. I almost choked on the irony. Then our father stood, adjusting his tie, preparing his proud father speech. He talked about watching his daughter grow into a successful woman, about her integrity and hard work. Each word was a lie built on my truth. When he finished, the DJ announced, "Any other family members want to say a few words?" Silence stretched. People shifted in their seats. Natasha looked relieved, assuming the spotlight would stay hers. I stood up. The movement felt slow, deliberate, inevitable. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "Who's that?" Another voice answered, "The other sister." The other sister. That's all I'd ever been. Until now. The DJ noticed me approaching and looked uncertain. "And you are?" His voice carried through the microphone, broadcasting my insignificance to 300 guests. "Brielle," I said clearly, "the bride's sister." Recognition flickered across faces. "Oh right, there is another one." Natasha's smile froze, her eyes flashing warning. "Don't ruin this. Don't make this about you." I took the microphone, feeling its weight in my hand. The room grew quiet, expectant. Even the servers stopped moving. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady and clear. "I want to share something important about my sister." I paused, letting anticipation build. "Something about the woman you all admire so much." Natasha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. But our mother grabbed her arm, holding her back. "Not yet." She didn't know what was coming, but she sensed something shifting. The air in the ballroom felt electric, charged with tension. I pulled the folder from my purse slowly, deliberately. "Let them watch." Let them wonder. My sister has built an incredible career, I continued. And I'd like to show you exactly how she did it. All eyes turned as I began speaking, 300 faces focused on me for the first time in my life. Natasha's smile faltered, confusion replacing confidence. She had no idea what was coming, no script prepared for this deviation. Gasps whispered through the crowd like wind carrying seeds of truth. I held up the printed emails, pages crisp and damning. 3 months ago, I discovered these in our company's shared drive, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. They show a pattern of plagiarism and theft. The word theft landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Our CEO sat straighter, attention sharpening. Coworkers exchanged glances. Natasha's face drained of color, her foundation suddenly too dark against pale skin. My sister has been stealing my work, I continued, and presenting it as her own. For years. I walked toward the projection screen, where wedding photos had been displayed earlier. A tech-savvy cousin had set up the equipment. I handed him a USB drive. Can you display these? He nodded, fingers moving quickly across the laptop. Within seconds, my evidence filled the screen, emails, timestamps, side-by-side comparisons. Proof, undeniable and massive. I pulled the full email thread from my folder, each page marked and highlighted. Screenshots of stolen work projected onto the big screen, 20 feet tall and impossible to ignore. My market analysis report, dated 6 months before hers. My client presentation, original files showing my authorship. Her emails forwarding my work to herself, then deleting trails. The room fell silent, heavy as snow. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. A child asked, Mommy, what's happening? Everyone stared at the screen, then at Natasha, then back at the screen. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulous, irrefutable. I'd spent 3 months building this case, and it showed. This report earned her a promotion, I said, pointing to the screen. This presentation got her a bonus. This analysis made her senior manager. All of it, every single piece, was mine first. Silence stretched so thin it could shatter. Our CEO stood slowly, his face unreadable. Natasha opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. The maid of honor backed away slightly, distancing herself. I felt nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction. Just the clean, clear relief of finally being seen. Natasha's face went pale, her carefully applied makeup suddenly garish against bloodless skin. Our parents' jaws dropped in synchronized shock. Colleagues muttered, voices building from whispers to audible disbelief. I can't believe it, someone said. All this time, another voice added. The woman everyone loved, everyone trusted, was unraveling before them like thread pulled from fabric. She tried to speak, but her voice came out strangled. She's lying, this is jealousy. But the evidence spoke louder. Dates, timestamps, metadata, all proving I'd created the work first. Her boss, our boss, stared at the screen with an expression that cycled through confusion, understanding, then cold fury. Years of trust disintegrating in seconds. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. We'll need to discuss this Monday morning. Not we, just her. The distinction was clear. She'd been identified, isolated, exposed. Natasha looked around desperately, searching for allies. But faces that had smiled at her moments ago now showed skepticism, betrayal, disgust. Social capital evaporating like water on hot pavement. I watched it happen with clinical detachment, observing rather than celebrating. A single chair tipped over behind me, the crash echoing across the ballroom like a gunshot. Guests gasped audibly, the collective intake of breath creating a sound I'd remember forever. That moment, the chair falling, the gasps rising, the truth settling over 300 people like ash, would be seared into memory. Into everyone's memory. This wasn't just my vindication. It was public, witnessed, undeniable. Natasha stumbled backward, her heel catching on her gown's train. Someone caught her elbow, steadying her, but it was mechanical assistance, not support. The gesture of strangers helping strangers, not friends protecting friends. Her isolation was complete. Our mother finally found her voice. "Brielle, what are you doing?" The question was absurd. What was I doing? I was telling the truth. I was existing loudly. I was refusing to be erased. "I'm exposing theft," I answered simply. "I'm showing everyone who Natasha really is." Dad's face cycled through emotions, shock, anger, denial, and something that looked like shame. Maybe he was finally realizing what they'd ignored for years. Maybe he was calculating social damage. Either way, silence was his only response. I read aloud the evidence, carefully and calmly, each word chosen for maximum impact. My voice stayed level, factual, morally justified. This wasn't hysteria or revenge. It was documentation. Truth spoken clearly enough that no one could misinterpret or dismiss it. Email dated March 15th. I read. Natasha forwarding my completed market analysis to herself at 2 a.m. My original file was submitted March 1st. I clicked to the next slide. Here's the presentation she delivered to executives in April. And here's my draft, dated February 20th. Each word pierced her social armor, the careful image she'd constructed over years. Colleagues whispered to each other, voices building. "I worked with her on that project," someone said. "She kept saying it was her research." Another voice. "She told me she stayed up all night working on it." The lies were compounding, multiplying, spreading like cracks across ice. I continued reading, methodical and thorough. Every stolen project documented. Every lie exposed. Every false achievement revealed. By the time I finished, Natasha was crying. Real tears this time, not the strategic ones she used for manipulation. She stammered, desperate words tumbling out without coherence. "You don't understand, it's not what it looks like. We collaborate, she's twisting things." She tried to charm her way out, deploying the smile that usually disarmed critics. But proof doesn't care about charm. Facts don't negotiate. Friends shook their heads, stepping away from her physically and socially. Our parents looked at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Her facade crumbled like sand castles against tide, years of careful construction collapsing in minutes. "The metadata doesn't lie," our CEO said quietly. His voice carried weight that silenced the room. "Original authorship is tracked automatically. These files clearly show Miss Brielle Hayes created the work first." He looked at Natasha with something like pity. "You're suspended pending investigation. We'll discuss termination Monday." The word termination landed like a verdict. Final. Irrevocable. Natasha's knees buckled. She caught herself on a table, champagne glasses rattling. Her perfect wedding, her perfect image, her perfect life, all imploding simultaneously. I felt no joy in her destruction, only the quiet satisfaction of truth finally surfacing after years underwater. She sank into the nearest chair, speechless for perhaps the first time in her life. Her mouth moved soundlessly, searching for explanations that didn't exist. I felt no triumph in her humiliation that would have required caring about her pain. Instead, I felt relief, clean and clarifying as cold water. Years of invisibility lifted from my shoulders, weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The crowd collectively processed the truth, faces shifting from shock to understanding to judgment. Whispers spread like wildfire. She stole from her own sister. For years. Her whole career is fake. Social death happens quickly once it starts. I watched it consume Natasha, recognition spreading across her face that nothing would ever be the same. Her wedding was ruined. Her career was over. Her reputation was ashes. And for the first time in our lives, she couldn't blame me for making things difficult. I hadn't created this disaster. I'd simply stopped hiding it. The DJ stood frozen, unsure whether to continue. A server dropped a tray in the kitchen, the crash emphasizing the silence. Someone's baby started crying, the sound lonely and uncomfortable. I turned, heels clicking against the marble floor with satisfying precision. Each step was deliberate, measured, final. I walked toward the exit, my back straight and head high. Silence followed me, sharp and intoxicating as champagne. 300 people watching me leave, seeing me clearly for the first time. Sometimes the loudest revenge is walking away, I whispered to myself, the words of private benediction. I'd said what needed saying. I'd shown what needed showing. Now I was done. Let them process. Let them judge. Let Natasha rebuild from rubble if she could. I reached the door, pushed it open, stepped into evening air that tasted like freedom. Behind me, voices erupted, questions, accusations, chaos. I didn't look back. Looking back would imply I cared what happened next, and I didn't. My part was finished. I'd reclaimed my voice, my work, my existence. I'd refused erasure and chosen visibility on my own terms. The parking lot stretched before me, cars glinting under streetlights. Mine was parked far away, relegated to the overflow lot like I'd been relegated to the hallway. But the distance felt good now, space to breathe and process. Outside, city lights sparkled through autumn trees. The air smelled like rain and possibility. My phone buzzed, 23 messages already, but I ignored them. Tomorrow would bring consequences, conversations, decisions. Tonight was mine. I drove away slowly, processing what had happened. The wedding was destroyed. Natasha's career was probably over. Family relationships were shattered beyond repair. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. I'd simply stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. The truth wasn't my weapon, it was hers, and she'd built it herself over years of theft and lies. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. The CEO. "Miss Hayes," he said formally, "I'd like to discuss your career trajectory. Can you come in Monday?" My career, not our investigation.
Mine.
Of course, I answered, keeping my voice professional. After we hung up, I sat in morning silence, processing the shift. I'd been recognized, finally, on my own merit. And I had one question for anyone reading this, anyone who'd felt invisible. Have you ever been the forgotten one? What would you do if the world overlooked your truth?